Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today's video, I'm going to be talking about career advice that I wish I knew sooner, before law school, before even applying to law school. All the things that if I had known sooner, I would have probably have implemented them sooner and gotten to where I am now a lot quicker, right? And so that's a lot of different things: career freedom, career flexibility, making more money. This applies to your legal career, to your law school career, but it also applies to just all other types of professional careers, okay? So let's go ahead and jump right into the video. Number one, network early and often, okay? I mean, there's a saying in the legal field, and it is so true. It is, the legal field is who you know and not what you know. And to an extent, of course, it is what you know, in being that you can't know nothing and still land a job and still get the career. But the idea is that majority of people have the base level of knowledge that they need to have if they have graduated from law school, if they got into law school, etc., right? But so moving forward, moving to the desired career path, whether that be big law, whether that be federal clerkships, whether that be government honors programs, whatever it may be, a lot of making that easier for yourself is who you know. And I'll give you a concrete example. So when I was doing interviews for my circuit court clerkship, I did 4 total circuit court clerkship interviews. One of those interviews came from a recommendation from actually, now that I think about it, 2 of those interviews, three of the 4. Guys, 3, I started off with 1, and then as I'm starting to talk, as I'm thinking about it, I'm realizing no, it was actually 3 out of the 4 interviews came because of who I knew, right? Came because of my network. So one of the interviews was over on the 9th Circuit, and that was because I paid to attend this networking event that I was gonna go regardless, okay? I was always into investing in my future, so I was gonna go regardless. But I had to drive like an hour and a half, and then, which is really not too bad, but I was in law school, it was late, whatever, paid to go. And I met a judge there. I met another judge who was in attendance at the event. We hit it off, we really got connected. I was telling her that I was applying for circuit court clerkships, and she asked me, oh hey, like I know tons of judges. Like, she was a state court judge, and she said, I know tons of just circuit court judges. Who are you applying to? Send me a list. Just volunteered it, right? And so then I got home and I sent her the list along with my application packet, along with my resume. And so she goes, well, I know this person and this person really well, so I'm gonna reach out to them on your behalf. And she did. And guess what? I got interviews with both of those 2 judges that she knew, right? And so that's just an example. The third one I don't need to get into, but it's kind of the same idea. But that's an example of why it's a lot of who you know and not what you know. And for that reason, that's also why when I'm doing presentations at law schools, when I'm doing presentations at undergrad, when I'm doing these to you guys, when I'm talking to my law school coaching community, the greats, I'm emphasizing to them, network, okay? You cannot control what your grades are gonna be. You can't control where you're gonna land in the ranking system, but you can control how often you network. So networking early and often is what I always say, going to open doors when your grades cannot, okay? And in the case of things like federal clerkships, even if your grades can open that door, you're going to need even more, because I was top of my class, and that even more is still what opened those doors for me, right? And so if I had known that sooner about this networking early and often, like I said, I would have been doing that from like even before I started law school. Once I got to law school, it was something I actually did heavily, because I had run into someone during, I think it was Georgetown's orientation actually, who talked about how his grades were actually bad, but he still ended up landing, okay, gosh, my watch is just talking. He talked about how his grades were bad, but he ended up landing a big law job anyway because of his networking. And so seeing that and talking to him about that in orientation before I started my 1L year many years ago, is what I took and said, all right, I know I need to be doing this. And so I was doing that. But again, if I had known this, I would have been applying it to other aspects of my life, right? Even before starting law school. So when I was trying to land a job after undergrad, when I was in undergrad. And so just take that and definitely apply it to your career from now. It's never too late. And I have a lot of examples too of my clients who through networking have been able to land jobs, even if they were big law jobs, let me be clear, even if they were not in the top of their class or necessarily coming from a top ranked law school. The second career advice I wish I had known and applied a lot sooner is finding mentors and coaches. So this was yet another thing that I absolutely 1000% did while I was in law school. I don't know if I've shared it before. I had actually a career coach. I had tons of mentors. I had I had sponsors. My list was long, baby. Okay, my list was long, right? And the reason that you want to seek out mentors, seek out coaches, and yes, you are going to have to shell out some money and pay for some of these things, but if you're investing in yourself and there's the return on the end is going to be worth it, then you have to be willing to make that investment. And so when I was looking for this and when I was doing these things, what I was really looking for was, did my mentor or coach achieve the things that I wanted to achieve? Are they working in an area that I'm interested in, potentially want to go towards? Actually, I don't know if I should say this on here. I did this in law school and I still do it now. Let me put it that way, okay? And so having these mentors, coaches, and sponsors is how you're going to move up the career ladder if that's what you want to do. Not everyone wants to, that's cool, good for you. But if you do not only move up the career ladder, but also progress in other areas of your life that you are looking to progress in. So definitely seeking those out so that you can have that guidance earlier on rather than later. And what I always say here too is do not reinvent the wheel. If you can have access to someone who has done it before and who can just tell you what to do, you need to get that access. You need to move forward with that person so that they can walk you through and make the path a lot easier for you. The next thing that I wish I knew earlier, or I started earlier, career advice I wish I had gotten, is just making more investments. So, and I think maybe at some point we could all say that we've been guilty of this. Maybe not you, but I love to shop. I still do love to shop. But when I was in undergrad and even after undergrad, I was spending a lot of my money on a lot of clothes. I mean, I still do, don't get me wrong. But I was spending a lot of money on my clothes. I was spending a lot of money on designer things. I was spending a lot of money on trips, different things like that. And that's all fine and well. Like I said, I still do that, but I'm a lot more balanced and smarter with my money and with my investments, right? And so I'm always trying to look for different ways to make investments in myself. So this in a way kind of relates to the previous point about finding mentors and coaches. So a lot of ways that I'll invest in myself is books and audios. So subscribing to people's podcasts, subscribing to people's paid platforms. There's a couple that are really good, and maybe I'll make a new video on it, but I have financial subscriptions, I have a business coach, right? And so tons of different things like that. I already mentioned before that I had a career coach, there's life coaches, right? And there's a couple of other people that I've seen before who also talk about similar investments they have made in their own lives. And so these are the things that I'm talking about, is making smarter investments, but making those investments in you, things that are going to progress you again as you are getting older, as you're moving forward in your career, because that's going to have the largest return than just tangible physical items like clothes, right? Other than those things making you happy, which you should still get. Okay. The next thing is learning to be sociable, right? And I've always been pretty sociable, so this really wasn't too difficult for me, but I know this one goes for all of my introverts, especially if you are looking for a certain kind of career, especially if you're looking for a high-paying career flexibility, career freedom. You're gonna have to have the ability to kind of turn it on and then turn it off. And what I mean is, when you're going out to these networking events, are you probably gonna feel maybe I don't wanna go to this networking event. Maybe the drive is too far, like the example I just gave. Maybe, I'm not gonna feel like going. Maybe I'm tired, right? Some of those times you are just going to have to say, I need to go, okay? And so essentially having this switch that you can kind of remember and remind yourself of what your goals are and why going to this potential event is going to be beneficial for you. And so not only in terms of networking events, but also just events in your area or events hosted by groups that you were potentially interested in, groups where people who are going to be in attendance, you could potentially find mentors, find coaches, right? Because you're probably not going to find a mentor sitting in your couch in your house every single day. You're probably not going to find it. Well, maybe you can find a coach online, but right, just getting out there and finding those people means you have to get out there and go to those events. Right? So making that change again earlier rather than later, and also building up your communication skills and ability to hold conversations. You have no idea how many people I meet for the first time or even meet more than once, and it's like they have no conversational skills. Like, it's like they've just been locked up in their house for the past 5 years. It's like you're asking them questions or you're trying to have a conversation and it's just nothing, right? You don't want that to be it. Okay, so the next thing is to become a better interviewer. I've always been a good interviewer. I love interviews. However, what I didn't know back then was that every single, for the most part, and I shouldn't say every single, but a lot of interview questions have a purpose behind it in terms of the way you are answering the question and what you are saying. So I'll give you a concrete example. I just remember when I was fresh out of undergrad, I was doing an interview for like a position with a mediation company. And it's a good thing I didn't get it because I was going to law school, but I remember to this day, because I was just thinking about it the other day, how the interviewer asked me, she's like, you know, you handled so many things, you did so many things, you're so like involved in all these things, et cetera, right? Because she has my resume. How did you balance it? And I said something along the lines of like, oh, you know, I've just always been good at that. I just kind of keep things at the top of my head and I just remember. like I said, I'm a really good interviewer, very personable, easy to get the interviewer to like me. I usually get every job, most of the jobs I interview for. But that answer was so wrong, but I didn't know that at the time. But now I know that, and I knew that, you know, once I got into law school and started actually doing mock interviews and when I started interviewing people myself, so like actually giving interviews, that answer is so wrong. Right? Because the proper answer is talking about a tracker, talking about my schedule, talking about how I prioritize, talking about how I organize things in terms of deadlines, right? A proper answer is giving a organized, complete, cohesive schedule or ability for me to create a schedule or something that I actually follow, not, oh, it's just at the top of my head. No, right? And so that's what I mean when I say become a better interviewer. It's recognizing that your answers matter. And this one is a little bit harder because you're, at the time when you're doing it, you're not gonna see anything wrong with your answer. When I was doing that interview, geez, 8 years ago, maybe, I didn't know anything was wrong with my answer. I do now, but I didn't back then. And so how you get this, how you improve this skill is by doing more mock interviews and getting feedback. And the better you get at interviewing, the higher the ability you are going to be able to have to progress in your career. The next thing I have is seeking out sponsors. So I touched on this a few points above, but with seeking out sponsors, essentially what this is going to look like. This is going to be someone who is going to speak your names into rooms that you are not in, okay? Speaking your name into rooms you are not in. So the difference between a mentor and a coach and a sponsor is that your mentor and your coach, your mentor is probably helping guide you along the way. They're giving you advice, they're giving you guidance, right? Your coach is probably actually ordering your steps or giving you the staircase and telling you what to do next, right? The sponsor, on the other hand, is not necessarily doing those things, but they're familiar with your work product, they're familiar with who you are, and they're going out there or the rooms that they are in, they're saying, hey, you should consider Sephora for this position. We should consider this person for this position. I'll give you an example of that. When one of my mentors was a young partner, she was in a partner meeting at her big law firm, at one of the top big law firms actually, and they were talking about the next class of partners and who should be considered. And one of the partners in there had a little piece of paper, wrote on it, folded it up, and passed it over to the general partner. And the general partner opened the paper, folded it back, and then they just went on with the meeting. As they were leaving, the general partner, or I keep saying general, but I think it's managing partner. I think he was the managing partner. Dropped the paper in the trash. My mentor, on her way out, she picked the paper out the trash and she looked at it. It had an associate's name on it. So that person who passed the piece of paper over to the managing partner was that associate sponsor. Even if it wasn't necessarily his title, even if he didn't necessarily call himself that, that is what that means, right? He was recommending this associate to the managing partner in this partnership meeting about the next class of partners. And did that person make partner? Yes. And so that's what a sponsor is going to be. And again, this is usually built up by doing a lot of good work for the person, developing a strong relationship with that person so that they can advocate for you in rooms that you are not in. So that is 6 pieces of career advice I wish I knew before starting law school, before starting my legal career, and you can apply it to any career you are hoping to go into. If you are a law school applicant, then you should check out our law school coaching community. It is called The Greats, and I coach you through all of your application into law school so that you can succeed and reach your big law, federal clerkship, or other goals. You can access that by going to toppingthecurve.com. It'll be on the screen and down in the description box. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Don't forget to follow me on my law school coaching social media, which is Topping the Curve on TikTok and Instagram. And I will see you guys on my next video. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.